This is CBN NewsWatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm George Thomas. Congressional Democrats are moving forward on an election reform bill that would have more control from states, give more control from states to the federal government. The so-called For the People Act would mandate early voting and outlaw voter ID requirements. Though each House Democrat supports it, Republicans say this is not the kind of election reform we need. Caitlin Burke has the story.
There's bipartisan agreement in Congress that some sort of election reform is needed. What that looks like, however, depends on which side is talking. For Democrats, it comes in the form of H.R. 1, which they call the Free the People Act.
The Democrats have been campaigning on two key provisions. One, that every person should have an equal right to vote, and that the voting rights really matter, and especially after the passage passing of John Lewis. Many Americans believe that we shouldn't have lobbyists and big donors and big money influencing our politics, and this would really try to get rid of a lot of the influence of big money.
This legislation aims to basically create a nationalized voting system, requiring uniform rules for all states. For example, mandating early voting and same-day registration, while also outlawing voter ID requirements and allowing ballot harvesting. Republicans charge the bill makes it easier to manipulate elections and more difficult to detect fraud.
This bill makes elections less trustworthy, not more. And trust is everything. When people can see the faults in the process, whether it's ballots at the wrong house or careless verification processes, they believe people are cheating. You can't just dismiss that. We have to fix it.
Former federal election commissioner Hans von Spakovsky, now with the Heritage Foundation, says this For the People Act basically benefits progressives and liberals in their goal of keeping control of Washington.
They're claiming it's all about access to the ballot box. But what they forget to tell folks is that you have to have both access and security. And there's no reason, for example, to do what H.R. 1 does, which is to make it illegal for any state to have a voter ID requirement.
Representative Ro Khanna disagrees that getting rid of the ID requirement would open the door for fraud.
I don't think so. I mean, the studies have not shown that voter fraud is rampant. I mean, I know that this is a big dispute. A lot of the voters who are not voting in some of these states are conservative voters, which is why you saw the Trump team putting such an effort on increasing voter turnout. So I think we all should be for higher voter turnout, and I don't think that's necessarily always going to benefit the Democrats.
The legislation, first introduced 2 years ago, would also require political groups to disclose high-dollar donors, create reporting requirements for online political ads, and in a nod to Trump, obligate presidents to disclose their tax returns. Penny Nance, president of Concerned Women for America, sees H.R. 1 as an effort to silence and cancel conservatives.
It is a power grab by progressive left, and it's also an opportunity to silence and to cancel conservatives who want to give to organizations like Concerned Women for America or Students for Life or Susan B. Anthony List or any others that they disagree with.
The fate of the bill ultimately depends on whether enough Republicans will consider legislation they've repeatedly rejected in the past. If not, Senate Democrats could move to eliminate the filibuster, getting rid of the 60-vote requirement, which would likely lead to the bill's passage. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thank you, Caitlin. Texas is lifting all restrictions and not requiring masks, set to be the first state to fully open since the pandemic began. CBN's Charlene Aaron tells us why the governor made the decision despite the CDC's concerns about the potential for more COVID-19 spikes.
Texas is leading the way as several states are reopening for business after rolling back many of their COVID-19 mandates, a move the CDC cautions against as variants of the virus may pose a greater threat. Texas will lift its mask mandate and allow all businesses to reopen next week.
Most businesses have been open either 75% or 50%. And during that time, 2 many Texans have been sidelined from employment opportunities. Too many small business owners have struggled to pay their bills. This must end. It is now time to open Texas 100%.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott citing the declining number of new cases and the flood of vaccines promised in coming months. 11 other states are also easing restrictions. Massachusetts is lifting indoor dining limits and opening up other businesses like gyms to 50% capacity. COVID cases across the country plunging more than 70%, down from an average of nearly 250,000 infections a day in mid-January. Average deaths per day plummeting about 40%. Numbers, though, are starting to creep up again, and top health officials warn states not to let their guard down.
I remain deeply concerned about a potential shift in the trajectory of the pandemic.
On the vaccine front, President Biden announcing a speeded-up timeline, promising doses for every American sooner than expected.
This country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May. That's progress.
Biden utilizing the Defense Production Act to foster a historic partnership between rival pharmaceutical companies Johnson & Johnson and Merck to increase vaccine production. Meanwhile, President Biden is pushing to reopen the country's public schools. He's urging states to prioritize vaccinating teachers and school staff by the end of March. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
By the way, the White House COVID response team slamming states that are relaxing restrictions like Texas and told residents to follow them anyway. The White House says the restrictions can be relaxed after the vast majority of Americans have been vaccinated. The president says there will be, as he mentioned, enough vaccines for every American by Memorial Day. But they have some immediate concerns. Among them, COVID cases and deaths are inching back up. Last week was 4% higher than the week before, and the deaths are more than 2% compared to the previous 7 days. On top of that, the U.S. is now dealing with 5 different variants, and some of them escaped the vaccine to some degree. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson joins us now with more on this. So, Lori, who is right here? States like Texas, Mississippi, and others that are relaxing mandates, or the Biden administration's COVID response team?
Well, George, really, they're both right. You can certainly sympathize and empathize with Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, who really just wants to get the economy going in Texas, and he wants these businesses to start flourishing again. And there is a way to do that safely in many cases. So we know that 75 million people, George, have already gotten at least one shot of the vaccine. And so these people do have some protection after about 2 weeks. So when you get your first vaccine, it takes about 2 weeks for the antibodies to kick in. And then, of course, you have the other shot in about 3 weeks after the first shot. So even more protection after that. So some people who are fully vaccinated may not necessarily need to wear a mask or social distance the way unvaccinated people do. And so really people, even though a lot of the mask mandates and some of these social distancing rules have been lifted, that people who are at more risk, who haven't been vaccinated at all, should probably, according to many health officials, still take precautions when necessary.
Lori, experts are warning of a possible 4th wave. How realistic is this?
Well, it all depends on these variants. We saw the huge spike in January. That was the 3rd wave. We saw one last March, and then there was one in August, and then we saw the great big one in January. And so now we're starting to see the cases and the deaths inch back up. You know, we feel such a sense of relief right now because the deaths and the cases have gone so far down since January. But believe it or not, we're actually higher than where we were in, for example, September of last year. And so these variants are very concerning because, number one, as you pointed out, they do escape the vaccine in some cases and some treatments, and some of them are more highly contagious than the original strain that we've been dealing with since the beginning of the pandemic. So folks should really be careful of that. We would hate to fumble the football on the 3rd-yard line, right before we finish this game. We're in a great spot, and some health experts are cautioning against celebrating too soon.
Yeah. I'm curious, will people be able to choose which vaccine they get?
No, unfortunately not. So we have the Pfizer and the Moderna and then the Johnson & Johnson. And health officials are saying when you are called, when you are offered a vaccine, go ahead and take it. Don't ask which one it is and take it based on that, because you never know when you're going to be offered a vaccine again. And between the time of when you refuse one and are offered another one, you could get sick from coronavirus and have a terrible consequence, pass it along. And remember, these variants are able to spread when the coronavirus spreads. So even if you have a very mild case of the coronavirus or an asymptomatic case, you can still add to these variants.
Yeah. Real quickly, 30 seconds. Some pro-life advocates don't like the J&J vaccine. Can you explain quickly?
The J&J vaccine was manufactured using a cell line from an aborted child, a child that was aborted in 1970. Now, contrary to what a lot of people are reading on social media, the fetal cells are not in the actual vaccine, but these cells are many, many generations, thousands of generations removed, but were used in the manufacture of this vaccine. A lot of pro-life groups, including the Vatican, say that it's okay to take this vaccine because, after all, it saves lives and is also a pro-life measure.
Okay, terrific. Lori, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. Sure. In other news, besieged by sexual harassment allegations, a somber New York Governor Andrew Cuomo apologized Wednesday, saying he learned an important lesson about his own behavior around women, but he said he intended to remain in office. Cuomo said he will fully cooperate with the state attorney general's investigation into sexual harassment allegations. Attorney General Letitia James is in the process of selecting an outside law firm to conduct an investigation into the allegations and produce a report that she says will be made publicly. We want to remind you of a new free service from CBN News. A CBN News daily email called Quick Start gives you the stories that you need each morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. You can receive important national, international, and faith-based news delivered right into your email box. You can subscribe to Quick Start at www.quickstart.news. Coming up, an Iraqi military base is hit twice in a year. See how this latest strike has claimed the life of a U.S. contractor.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on The Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back, folks. You're watching the CBN News Channel. A U.S. contractor died of a heart attack while taking cover during an attack on a military base in Iraq. At least 10 rockets struck the Al-Assad air base in western Anbar province overnight. It's the same base, by the way, hit by Iran in January 2020 after the U.S. strike taking out Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Iraqi military sources say today's attack did not do significant damage. Some suspect Iranian-backed militias launched this attack, retaliating after U.S. warplanes hit similar groups in eastern Syria last week. Middle East expert Seth Frantzman told CBN News these militias are an extension of Iran's military.
They're a state within a state. They have their own finances and checkpoints. They terrorize people. They fire rockets. They have drones. They have missiles.
The attacks coming just 2 days before Pope Francis is scheduled to visit Iraq. CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now with more. Chris, good to see you. So media reports say the massive Al-Assad base, which has many U.S. soldiers, had Patriot air defenses installed last year after the first Iranian attack. Chris, do we know why those defenses didn't deploy?
I don't think we know exactly why they didn't, George, but you would expect the Patriot missiles to be deployed and in an attack like this. Maybe it's possible the missiles of the rocket attack this morning wasn't quite as large as the one in January 2020. If you look at the footage from CENTCOM in January 2020, these were missiles that had 1,000-pound warheads, extremely large, and perhaps maybe something like the Iron Dome would have been a better precaution or defense against these rockets at this massive base inside Iraq.
Iran has a vast network of militia groups around the Middle East. Do they have a common goal? And what's the U.S. doing to stop their influence?
Well, the goal, George, is actually to have a hegemony. They want to have a sort of an arc all the way from Tehran to the Mediterranean Sea. This is the goal of Iran. These Iranian Shiite proxy groups are all led, funded by Iran. We're actually up there not just a few years ago after ISIS had devastated much of this area. And what happened is that many of these Iranian Shiite militias came in and really influenced that Nineveh plain in many ways. So the people, many of the believers that had been attacked, persecuted by ISIS, now many of them are under the influence of the sway of these Iranian groups. What the U.S. is doing is to try to maintain some sort of military presence to be able to serve as a buffer against this encroachment, this road, sort of Shiite road, all the way from Iran to Lebanon. They have bases in Syria and Jordan as well, and Iraq. So the U.S. is at least has a presence there to thwart these groups.
Chris, despite today's attack, Pope Francis says he's still planning to visit Iraq on Friday. Man, such a high-profile visit has to be a nightmare for security officials, right?
Oh, definitely, I'm sure. But I think, George, it's actually a sign of hope. I was watching some video earlier today about the largest church in Karakosh. We were there just after ISIS had been defeated, and this particular church had been ransacked by ISIS. They had burned all the books in the library. There was a heap of ash there left. Now I was watching volunteers clean that. They were used at target practice. They burned the pews. Now I saw the church being restored. So I think the Pope's visit is really, as he calls it, an act of love. I think it's going to bring hope to the believers there in the Nineveh Plains and throughout Iraq. And it's a symbolic sign to Christians around the Middle East.
Yeah. Real quickly, last 30 seconds, dig deeper on that. What is the goal of the Pope's four-day visit?
Well, he's sending a signal. Part of it will be an interfaith dialogue. He's going to be speaking with the Ayatollah Sistani there inside Iraq. But I think ultimately it's a sign to believers. They're not forgotten. We are with you. We pray for you. We support you. And I think it's a very important sign for Christians, Catholics throughout Iraq that have been devastated by first al-Qaeda, then ISIS, and now many of these Iranian Shiite groups.
Okay, terrific. Chris, we'll have to leave it there. As always, sir, thanks so much for coming on the broadcast.
Great to be with you, George.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Watch On the Home Front today at 2:30.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Missouri is expected to become the first abortion-free state in the country. Our Heather Sells talked with one of the pro-life leaders there about their efforts.
Missouri is inching closer to becoming the first abortion-free state in the country. It has one abortion clinic left, and the pro-life movement in the state is doing all that it can to reduce the number of abortions. Joining us now is Rachel Hiley with the St. Louis Coalition for Life. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Great. I want to ask you, it's so interesting what's going on in Missouri. You've got one abortion clinic left in St. Louis. You've also got competition from an abortion clinic just across the river in Illinois. What is the strategy of the pro-life movement in Missouri right now, knowing that if you shut down the St. Louis clinic, there's still another one close by?
That's right. There is only one remaining clinic here in Missouri, but the one right across the river is just as big a threat. Even if the clinic here on this side of the river were to shut down or to cease operations, it doesn't protect Missouri women from the threat of abortion, and we can't give up. So regardless of whether we're fighting abortions in the state of Missouri or Illinois or even over in Kansas, we have to remain vigilant here in Missouri to provide for women to make sure that they don't feel abortion is even something they need.
Yeah. What have you seen happen during this pandemic? How has this affected abortions?
The pandemic has certainly affected abortion just as much as it's affected everything else in our world. The panic caused by widespread illness, by the threat of disease and sickness, seeks into women across the country and here in Missouri as well. So whether it's the pandemic and the threat of illness and sickness, or the very real financial strain that it's put on women in the state, it makes abortion seem even more attractive than it did before. Women who previously never would have considered abortion are now saying, well, because of the pandemic, there's no other choice. How could I be pregnant during a pandemic? How could I bring a baby into the world during the pandemic? I got laid off of my job. I am struggling to make ends meet, or I'm terrified of going to a hospital. I'm terrified of getting sick while being pregnant. So there's definitely been an effect.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you work with women in crisis pregnancies at this time to encourage them not to have an abortion?
Our strategies have stayed the same. We remain committed to providing for women whatever it is they need. We have to meet them where they're at. And in this time of pandemic, it means meeting them in that place of fear and in need. We work with them, alongside them, to help get them connected to whatever resources it is that they need, whether that's proper medical care, whether it's employment because they were laid off of their job or furloughed, finding them the proper care that they need to eliminate those concerns. The concerns that are making them run to abortion in the first place are things that we have the power to address, things we can help them overcome so that they feel confident and equipped to bring a baby into the world.
All right. And Rachel, what is your hope with respect to this one last clinic? Is that a big goal to hopefully encourage the state to shut that down?
Absolutely. Absolutely. While it won't end the battle, it's certainly a step in that direction. Every abortion facility that we can close, every opportunity we can take to march ourselves closer to the goal of ending abortion in this state and every other state and in our entire nation, we want to fully invest ourselves into that so that we can see an end to abortion in our entire country. Starting with the state of Missouri, we want to continue working towards that, absolutely.
All right, Rachel Hiley with Coalition for Life in St. Louis. Thanks for your time.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the Sleep Doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come and...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
The son of actor and filmmaker Tom Hanks opened up about his years as a rebellious teen and atheist beliefs. He says a hike in the desert led to a change in his worldview.
And it was at that moment, that was the birth of my spiritual life. That was that was how I was overcoming. I knew, okay, no, there is something else out there. Okay, there is a higher power. There is higher intelligence.
That's pretty cool. Hanks said he was overcome with emotion and filled with hope and gratitude and peace, like God had tapped him on the shoulder. Oh, that's pretty cool. Folks, that's it for this edition of CBN News Watch from all of us here. Goodbye and God bless.